I wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, a little bit about meditation, before we start. And primarily the practice of noting. And some people call it labeling. It's a practice that a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, some people advocate. And I was at a retreat with Shinzen Young, who spoke of it quite highly. If you don't know who Shinzen Young is, he's a teacher that's been teaching like for 40 years. He's been around the block, and he's got some very interesting, very, very brilliant man. He's got some very interesting things to say always. And he's got some very nice videos on YouTube if you ever want to check out Shinzen Young. And I can write that name down for you later on if you like. But there's a practice that is called labeling or noting, and what it consists of is it's a mindfulness-based practice. And when something comes up to our awareness, we're to note it or to label it. And so we might be sitting, and we might feel something in the knee or in the back or something. We might say body. We might even say pain. And so it brings our awareness directly to it. And then something else might come up. We might feel pleasantness in the body because of the temperature or something like that. And so that feeling might be labeled as a feeling or pleasantness. Or we might even label the temperature itself, or the coolness, or the heat, or something like this. A thought might come up, and we label it. We can label it thinking. A thought of the past might come up, and we might label it, thinking of the past or thinking of the future, something like this. And we might think of in order of like a teaching or something that we've learned. And we might think of, thinking, or again, thinking, or, contemplating, like contemplating a meaning of a teaching or something like that. And it can go on and on. And generally, what it kind of ends up being is a looking contest, kind of. It does for me personally. Like I'm constantly looking for the next thing to come up. And inevitably, the things come up slower and slower when you're looking. It's like the cat waiting for the mouse to come out of the mouse hole. And you keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and it doesn't appear. Then as soon as you draw your attention away from it, the mouse comes out, and it's like, oh, there it is. And it's like that with the mind. It's like trying to think of our next thought. If we think, what is my next thought? What is my next thought? It feels like it doesn't come sometimes, like it doesn't come up. And so, to me, the labeling and the noting, this kind of thing, it just got too busy. I mean, it was like an activity that got too cognitive for myself. And so in the past, what I've done is simplify it. And I'd kind of like to have people try this tonight if you can. Simplify this technique or this practice, and then we can talk about it afterwards if you like. And it's very simple. And the premise is that we really note when we're in the present moment, we're in this stillness. So when we're thinking about something, a thought comes up, for example, and most likely we can label it almost always as a thought from the past, or a thought from the future, or something from the present moment. And so even simplifying it more, if there's a thought from the past that comes up, let's say I think I'm meditating and a thought from something that I did yesterday comes up. Obviously, that's a thought of the past. And I might even just label that as something like P, from the past, just the letter P. And if I'm planning on, fixing something or something I might be doing tomorrow, like a schedule or, something I'm looking forward to, for example, obviously that's something, a thought based on the future. And so to even simplify it, this is just in my mind anyway, I'll just kind of see that as F, like the letter F. I don't even say the whole word future. Like somebody could say that's a future-based thought, but for me, I would just say it as F, and then come back to the breath. And then when we come back to the breath, that's actually the present moment, or what I would consider stillness. Because the mind isn't going, to the past or to the future. Right now, this is the past and this is the future. Okay, and then this is stillness right here, or the present moment. And so we can be, resting in meditation, and an idea will come up. That idea, most likely, is something based on the future. I have an idea how to fix something or how to create something, future-based. And we notice that as the future, and that's fine. And we just go, okay, I'm meditating now, so I want to come back to the stillness. We're resting in that stillness, and we hear a sound, and all of a sudden the mind takes off back into, well, I used to have a truck that sounded like that, or something, thought based on the past. So then we go, and then that's fine. Again, there's nothing wrong with the past or the future, except it's just mind-made activity, things that we're creating, and we come back into this presence. And so it's really a practice in mindfulness to see where the mind goes. Just really these three. So we're just looking at three different areas: past, future, and then this presence or this stillness. And the reason I say stillness is because I'm kind of shortening it with these letters, like past. There's already a P there, so the presence would also have a P. So I'm just labeling it as stillness and reminding myself to rest in this stillness. Understand what I'm saying? And so, and that's the practice. I think you'll find that after a while, you'll really, really tune into the moments of presence or the stillness. You'll really notice that when you're in the pocket, so to speak. And when we can do that in meditation, then we're much more apt to do that in our everyday activities. We get upset about something, and we'll see right away that's labeled on, something based on the past. Sometimes we might come up with something that switches from the past so fast into the future that it just seems to skim right over this presence. So let's say we're thinking about something that happened yesterday, that we were doing something, then we just remembered that, we didn't complete that. We're going to have to finish this up tomorrow or tonight or something. So it goes from the past to the future. But and that's fine as long as we notice that. That's what is happening. And again, there's nothing wrong with the past or the future. It's just that we are setting the intention to be in this present moment while we're meditating. And so this time is real precious, for us to be in this present moment, because it's very healing for us. We normally don't do it throughout the day. And so we really owe it to ourselves to be in that presence and to see ourselves for who we truly are, beyond the excessive thoughts. And so it's a kind of a training ground for us. We're training the mind, to recognize the stillness that is our birthright. And in that stillness we'll find that we feel very complete. Very naturally complete, and I think it's if you've never done this before, I think you'll learn a lot about yourself. And then, like I said, we'll discuss this afterwards and see. So just kind of keep track of maybe how where the mind is. Just as if, just pretend like Mindfulness Monthly magazine is going to interview you about your meditation, and you're going to have to explain how your meditation went based on the past and the future and all this kind of thing. Any questions? No, that's all right.
Talk about like the past that's just yesterday. Sometimes my past is like a long time ago.
Yeah, no, that's fine. As long past is the past. Yeah.
And then I have to
Like way back there. Yeah. No, that's fine. And so, yeah, past is past as far as that it goes, and future is future too. We might think, oh, I'm. So the craziest thing comes up in our mind. A lot of times we don't even notice it. We might be all of a sudden sit in meditation and realize that we're afraid of death, for example. And that's definitely a future-based, thought activity. And all of these we just want to keep in mind. And it's really humorous, really, that all of this is created by the mind. And so what it points out to us that all the problems that we really have are created by the mind. Because in this presence, sometimes it's just a really thin slice of this presence. But when we're in that, we're fine. We are complete in every way. And the difference between the everyday lay people and the saints and sages is that the saints and sages can rest in that for long periods of time. And so for that reason, they're not worried about reaching enlightenment. They're not worried about not reaching enlightenment or being enlightened or anything like that, because they're just resting in that presence. They're not seeking anything, not looking for anything. So that's kind of some people's definition of enlightenment or being complete all the time is that they're no longer seeking to be enlightened. They're no longer playing that game, so to speak.
Is some thought other than just noticing the five primary senses, is some thought present? I mean, like analytical thought, problem solving, creative thought. 2 times 2 equals 4. Is that future, past, or present? That thought.
Well, yeah, there's definitely present moment thought. A lot of it is fantasy. We'll notice that. And when we're doing the critical, the critical thinking or the cognitive problem solving, for the most part, a lot of that is present moment. But if we're figuring out a problem, if we catch ourselves figuring out a problem to fix something in the future, or I don't know, I got all sorts of projects I got going tomorrow, actually, and I could be thinking about those, But as far as doing math in the head or something like that, that could be looked at as present moment activity. But I guess in meditation, we wouldn't want to necessarily lean towards that or rely on that or go into that. We want to, and I'll guide us through this as part of this, but of course in meditation we want to rest on our intended object of meditation and use that as our tool rather than using the activity of the mind as a tool to come into that presence. You know, like problem solving and stuff like that. But the more we do this and think in these terms, past, future, and present moment, or the stillness, we will notice different things like that. Exactly like how you brought up the question, you know, Chris. So it's
the thought just crossed my mind that if one is doing, say, like a math problem, aren't they, though, going back to a frame of reference of which they had, which would be the past?
from when they learned.
Sure. You know, so I'm doing a multiplication table, and you know, or you know, the example was put 2 times 2 is 4. You know.
Yeah.
I
Well.
understand that completely. Sure, I'm in the present moment doing that problem, but that's all from a frame of reference of which I've been taught in the past.
Yeah. Well, most everything is though too. I mean, if we were,
Sure.
I mean, we can walk down the path, you know, and be very present. And we're walking. There's at one time we couldn't do that, you know. We couldn't walk, you know. We really had to
Right.
think about it. But I don't know if that's part of the cognitive. Well, I mean, once something is learned, you know, I don't know if it really is part of the cognitive, that cognitive part of the brain, you know, like the frontal lobe, you know, thing that is actually conjuring that up. I guess it probably is that part of the brain that's conjuring it up, but it's not a part of our, you know, conscious. It's more of a subconscious kind of thing. It's like all this stuff we learn is buried in the subconscious, and it's there for us to use, hopefully properly, you know. And so what we're mostly looking at is activities and thoughts based on, you know, just the hard stuff, I guess you could say. So if you would make yourself comfortable, please. Is that light bothering you, Mazinga? Okay, that's fine. Okay. With the eyes closed, bring your attention to the body. The body is the vehicle that got us here. And it's the body that is now relaxing, hopefully. That feels relaxed, comfortable. And generally, when we think of the body, and tune into the body and use the body as a tool, we are in that presence. That's why I often start meditations with the body. Also ask people to bring their attention to the breath, which is a part of the body. And so all of this can be used as a tool to come into this presence and this stillness. If we use the breath, for example, we can find a spot on the body where we feel the breath as it moves in and out. We can do a lot of different things with the breath to bring us into this presence, but this is just one example. So anything that allows us to come into this present moment. And again, the easiest thing to use is some aspect of the body. Even if we feel a pain in the body, we're being very present. But when the mind starts thinking, oh, this pain isn't going to work out this weekend, I have different plans, and all of a sudden we're thrusted into the future. Or we're thinking about how that pain might have happened, what caused it. Chances are we might be thinking about what happened in the past. And for the most part, this is very normal thinking, a very normal thinking process. But when we're meditating, we want to set the intention to set aside as much of that thinking, that type of thinking as we can, and do what I call resting in the present moment. So we can do an experiment, if you would follow along with me just a little bit for a few moments and get an idea of how it feels. Just think about something that you did yesterday, something that maybe you enjoyed doing, something that you hopefully vividly remember doing, all the details. Could be anything. Could be talking on the phone, or sitting at the desk, or exercising, or working. So if you have the ability to visualize, you can probably see yourself doing this. And it's all connected to the thinking process. And so we can actually think about what we did yesterday or any time in the past. We can either see it or just think about it in terms of remembering that activity, not really worrying about the visualization or the imagery. And experience it just as a thought. And of course, we can do this with anything that happened in the past. And we do this all the time, all day long, without actually labeling it as the past. Think about something that went wrong yesterday or the day before, something that wasn't very pleasant. And we can actually feel that within the body. So when we think about something that went wrong, something that didn't go right, something that was unpleasant or just kind of a negative thing, the body reacts, and the mind doesn't really know that it's happened in the past. So every time that thought is brought up, the same energy and the same chemicals are used within the mind and the body. The cortisol or adrenaline or whatever is happening as if it actually happened can actually happen again. Maybe not to the same extent, but if this experience is brought up again and again and again, like they can, we can notice difficulties as a result, difficulties within the mind and the body. So we cross over from the past and bring our attention to the future. And think of something that you would like to accomplish tomorrow. Something you'd like to get done. It could be something that you're dreading or something that you're really looking forward to. Doesn't matter. It could just be a mundane activity. And we think about something as simple as brushing our teeth tomorrow morning. It doesn't cause any stress or tension. But if we would have a dentist appointment at noon tomorrow, we would be a little bit more concerned about that, knowing, particularly if we knew that we had to have a few teeth drilled or something like this. There would be some anxiety. And of course, the more we thought about that, the more anxiety there would be. We can think of something that might be pleasurable that we're going to do tomorrow. Meeting somebody, having a nice meal. And notice how that feels within the body. And now, after doing these simple exercises, bring yourself into the present moment, right now. Use the tool of the breath or whatever your meditation object might be, and focus on it. You can even use the sound of my voice, if you like, to come into this present moment, away from the past, away from the future. Tuning into the body, some aspect of the body, if you like. And notice how that presence feels, that stillness. It should feel different. It should feel lighter, more pleasant, less concern. Everything is fine just the way it is. Nothing has to change. Nothing to be looked for, sought out, or changed, or fixed. Or remembered or forgotten, just resting in the present moment. And when we become sensitive to this, then we can notice the mind kind of leaning one way or the other. And this is the practice, if you will. Just simply noticing the past or the future, leaning one way or the other. It could be moments into the past, could be years into the past, or moments into the future, or years into the future. Just the idea of becoming sensitive to all this and noticing and then coming into the present moment. And knowing that all of it is okay. All of it is a part of the mind. No judgment about ourselves or the activity, no commentary, no decision making. Nothing being right or wrong, just being very, very aware of where the breath or the mind is. Is it in the past? Is it in the future? Is it in the present moment, in the heart of this stillness? If your attention's not on the breath, bringing it back to the breath. Take a little deeper than normal inhalation. Bring some energy into the body. And then slowly exhale this air. And then take another deeper than normal inhalation. Breathing in some alertness, some aliveness. Exhaling. And then another deeper than normal inhalation of air. You can just hold that for a moment and then slowly let it out. Thank you all. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience and courage and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face. Thank you all. Thank you. So we got a 4-day retreat coming up this weekend, and ideally, everybody in that retreat would be in this presence, for about 64 hours. That's how long the silence lasts, and 64, 65 hours, something like that. And I say ideally because it's not very practical to expect people to be in that state of presence, for that long a time. But that's why we do have the silence in a retreat like that. That's why we ask people not to speak to others and not to use their phones and not to read, over excessively. That's a tough one, I know. Because meditators love to read, get in your bed at night and read for a little while before you go to sleep. I don't know. But to be in that presence, hopefully you understand what I'm talking about, and how peaceful it can be, and how much that can extend our life. I saw a video the other day of a guy that sleeps 4 hours a day. He meditates about 4 hours a day and sleeps about 4 hours a day, and he says that's all he needs. But I know a lot of people on retreat, they notice that they have a lot more energy and they sleep less, and technically they need less food, but usually people eat more on a retreat because that's just one of the ways to kind of hide the mind in a way. But to be present, it doesn't take nearly as much energy as it does when we are what we could consider lost in thought. How many of you remember the old movie Lost in Space? Or it's a series. It was a series, right? Am I aging myself by saying that? Because that's an old one. Huh?
60s.
60s? Yeah. I was just born when that was ending.
I just heard about it.
I heard about it. Yeah.
It's still on.
Is it?
Yeah, I watch it from time to time. It's quite
Really?
entertaining. It's Will
Yeah.
Rogers.
I'm watching the rerun. The reruns is what I'm talking about, not the original. Wow. Yeah. But when you can imagine Lost in Space and how that feels, but we do get lost in the mind, and so in this practice we're thinking about we're ideally resting in this presence, right? And we can think a little bit about the past or the future, whatever it might be, and we go, oh, I'm thinking about the past or future. Isn't that nice? And then we come back into this presence, because that's our intention, to come back in this presence. And from time to time, though, we can notice that we are just lost. We are lost in thought. Like lost in space, but it's just lost in the past or lost in the future. And we go, wow, I was way out there, and then we can bring it back in. And the reason we want to practice this way from time to time, and some people practice like this all the time, but we want to get out of that habit of sitting in meditation and allowing the mind to just go. Because in a way, we're not really meditating. We're just allowing the mind to have its way, like we often do. And some people, it might seem a little bit strict, to watch the mind all the time. Am I in the past or the future? And bring it back. But again, this is our intention in meditation, to cultivate what Buddha called cultivating the mind. And this is the way of doing it. Just watching it. The analogy, many analogies, but the puppy on a leash, and a long leash. These new leashes where you just push a button and the cord goes, and then we can push the button and kind of reel them back in, like fishing or something. If we let the monkey mind, just go, that's a habit that we can allow to happen in meditation, just like all the other habits that we do. Any comments? Should I pick on anybody? On what percent, let me pick on Joe. What percent was your mind present or future or past?
I'd say about 60% in the past. About 20% in the present.
Yeah.
And a little bit in the future, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Unless I go into fantasy, then that would kind of sort of be like future.
Yeah.
Not like being like in some sort of like complete fantasy, but like thinking about the future and going, if this, then that.
Yeah.
And then because, and so forth, and then, well, if we go this way or that way, then that will be the outcome. But if I
Yeah,
go
that's-
this way, but
It still sounds-
that's like I call it fantasy
Yeah.
because it's untrue.
It sounds.
Because
Well.
when you get there, it's never anything like.
None of it is true.
Right.
I mean, but it sounds like the past. I mean, the future to me too.
That's a future. That's the future. When I do like I said,
But if we go into fantasy, it's because we're tired, and that's the one that used to hang me up all the time. I'm not in the past, I'm not in the future, but it doesn't seem like I'm present, and it's just like this fantasy, which seems like presence, and it probably is, but it's just a fatigue. It's a fatigue of the mind. And anybody else experience that? Or fantasy? It could be anything that isn't related to the past or the future. It's just almost like a daydream, and you go, oh, okay, where was I? It's like, it happens. And it's just, it's a way it's just oftentimes related to fatigue. That's the sloth and torpor that the Buddha talked about in the 5 hindrances. Paul, my friend, where?
Yes. I was really good. I was probably 70% present.
Just resting in that stuff.
Yeah.
Anything come up from work?
Oh, yeah. And 25% work. Yeah. I don't really think about the past too much. Maybe 10%.
Oh, so you're like what's coming up for work,
Oh, yeah.
scheduling and all that stuff.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a part of the function of the mind. I mean, it's very normal, very natural. And in this case, we're knowing we are the witness of that, and but 70% presence is very good. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't have a percentage, but I noticed that it was easier for me to get carried away. Not that I was trying to, but I got carried away more in future things than the past. The past was easy to release, like just,
Yeah.
oh, past. But all of a sudden I was like, oh, where did I go? And I was far up there in the future. or
In the
some
future.
fantasy. But
Creating
past was
something?
just- yeah, or even neutral to me, just something that was going on that I was watching. Had nothing to do with me, just came.
Mm.
But the past was easy to just say, like, oh,
Yeah.
past.
Very often we can be in the present moment, and like we know that we're in this presence, but we can think about the future or even the past. We can be in the presence, and know that the mind is there. Going into the future, but usually we're lost. We're lost in the future, creating and that kind of thing, or the past.
And then I found it funny that what most of the time brought me back to the present was I was thirsty. And then it was just the body reminding me, you're thirsty.
Remind me that you're thirsty.
You're thirsty. I was like, okay,
So thirst is a good thing, huh?
I guess.
Do you have water, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. We don't want anybody dehydrating here, meditating. We'd make the news probably. But. What about you, young lady?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't really spend a lot of time in the past, gratefully. I probably did that more when I was younger. I don't go there anymore. Forgiven myself for most of my sins. But tonight I was definitely either in the future or I was doing sloth and torpor. I'd say probably 40% present and 30% future and 10% sleeping. Fantasy,
Sleeping,
dream,
sitting up,
dreaming,
sleeping
yeah,
on it, yeah.
starting to dream, going to bed.
Tired.
Yeah, I'm tired.
It's the heat.
Yeah.
Blame it on the heat.
Okay.
It's the heat.
Yeah.
It's the heat. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
slipping.
Yeah. Mozinga.
Yeah, for me, it's it's kind of like come back to the body, to scan the body. It's like I don't like that much because I go when you say very experience can be pain. So for me, it's just like okay, it's when I go there, it's like pain, and then that take me to the past. I say okay. It was there, and I come to the present, it's still there. And then if I go to the future, so when that is gonna be resolved, so I'm just like, I can say like 30% present, and because I try to avoid the body and just focus on the breath.
Mm-hmm.
Just come back to the breath, come back to the breath. So if I go to the past, I have to leave it alone and come back to the breath.
Mhm.
Go to the future, leave it alone. I rush to the breath. So that's something that was, I figured it out. Probably a good thing that I
About 30%. Huh?
Mm.
You think about 30% in the present.
yeah.
So it's kind of like even.
Even.
Everything's,
like even.
Yeah.
Because God there is come back. So before I know it, I went, it's been there, what happened? So it's like even. So
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Try to figure out where I should be, I want to be in the present.
Yeah.
So, and then the man worked really harder to come back to the present.
It,
It's not easy.
we're not used to doing that. You know, we're not used to trying to be in the present moment. But, you know, once we realize that that's where we feel the best, like when we're very happy or when we're laughing, you know, for example, and just joyful, we are usually in the present moment. Even if somebody tells us a good joke, we are joyful, and that we're very present. We're not even thinking about the joke necessarily. You know, somebody tells us about, we're visualizing something and it brings joy to us, you know, and then we start laughing, and we're very, very present. And usually those are the best times that we've ever had in the present moment. We can be inspired by the future, and we can think of something and be creative and be very, very inspired, and that can bring happiness to us, and that's joy. That brings a great amount of joy for a lot of people. But there's a part of that it's coming from, of course, everything is coming from the present moment. But when we become inspired about something that we're going to do in the future, just, you can check it out for yourself to see that how much of that presence is there, that this is happening right now, and that's the joy is there, but we're still thinking about something in the future. It's very interesting. And all of this is like an experiment, kind of, in a way, that we want to check it out for ourselves and see how it feels. And it's kind of fun to look at it as a concept of percentages. What percent was I present? What percent was I in the past and in the future? Just to kind of educate us, But we probably don't always want to do that in our meditation. That's kind of cognitive. 30%'s good, but you're using the body, right? You're using the body to be in that 30.
I use the breath.
The breath is a part of the body. Yeah.
But
Well, we can do this. We can do this outside of meditation as well. I mean, this is a very good practice we can do anytime. And we can, notice when we're doing this critical thinking and, working our way through something, we can still be present while we're doing that. Working through a process, or, being creative with our hands or whatever, we can be very present. It's like somebody doing the dishes. They're like the Zen monk doing the dishes. I'm doing the dishes. That's all I'm doing is the dishes. When I'm doing dishes, I'm doing the dishes. And chopping wood or getting water or whatever. That's, you just chop wood, or you just get the water, and nothing else. So you can be very present in your everyday activities too. But when we're washing the dishes, thinking about where we would like to be, or what we did last week, or what I have to do to, if we pay attention to what is happening, we can see where our stress and anger and our fear and all these things, all this negativity comes from. If I'm doing something, doing yard work or whatever it is, and I'm rushing through it because I have something else to do in the future, it's miserable. But if I have plenty of time to do it, I can be very, very present and just just do it. Take my time. I'm mowing the lawn, and that's all I'm doing. I'm mowing the lawn, But if I'm mowing the lawn and I have to be someplace in 15 minutes, it's like,
Those mundane activities are the best training ground to try to keep yourself present, because that's where it's so easy to
yeah.
drift into something else. It's boring, it's mundane, you do it all the time. It's not fun. particularly.
It can, yeah. Yeah, that, it's interesting too to ask ourselves what really gives me joy, what does bring us joy. And in many cases we'll find that our joy is hidden in the mundane sometimes.
Not in the dishes.
What's that?
Not in the dishes.
No, not in the dishes. But, that's why they make dishwashers, just to hide the dishes, Just, where do I put these? I'll put them in this box called a dishwasher. I'll put them in there. Then you don't have to worry about them, And then you can push a button later on. What's that?
The dishes sometimes is kind of calming.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, if you have time, if you don't have to be anywhere, yeah, right. Yeah, so it's pointing to the idea that life is like that, and we create a lot of our own suffering, if not all of it. The future can be very, very pleasant when we, use it to be inspired and use it for creativity. And again, notice how that when we do that, when it is inspiring and creative for us, that we are present when we're doing it. When we're thinking about something joyful that happened in the past, oftentimes, it brings joy to us, and we can feel that in the body. All these things that we feel in the body seem to bring us into this presence. Anybody else want to share that didn't share? I don't want to pick on people necessarily.
I was just going to say that I found it very difficult just to simply note. Just that simple past return. It seems like I would hang out with whatever thought was there, whether it was past or future. Rather than that in itself is a
Kind of an attachment.
what's that?
Kind of an attachment. I mean,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it's
especially
sticky.
If it's a pleasant past.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
it's a pleasant past, it's almost a yearning,
yeah,
a desire to be away from the present. And
Yeah.
so it makes it difficult to return to the present.
yeah,
And then I noticed when I did come back to my present, there seemed to be an associative tenseness that I felt in my body. It's almost like in that journey in my mind, suddenly my shoulders got kind of hunched.
in the present.
And so
No.
when I returned to the present, I had to then make an effort to relax
Hmm.
the body again to then be able to focus on the breath.
Yeah, I wonder how much that happens throughout your days. You know
Well,
what
I
I
think
mean?
that when you mentioned how taxing and how tiring just always being caught in thought and away, I'm thinking if my body tenses up in this short moment of meditation and just this however 2 seconds or 3 seconds that I was somewhere else,
Yeah,
what is my body doing when I'm an hour and a half somewhere else?
yeah,
And just not present and aware of that.
yeah. Yeah, it's a habit, just like everything else. Somebody that isn't used to being alone with their thoughts, like in meditation or some kind of a contemplative practice, might not even realize or even give it a thought whether they're thinking about the past or the future, And generally we go throughout our days not considering it. But I think it's a real good practice to do so, especially noticing when we come into that presence and go, what is this? It's my old friend, that present moment. I always go like this when it's presence, It's almost like, Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and we will see you next week, if not before. And remind your friends to watch the videos on YouTube and And bring your friends here too. So, thank you.
Thank you.